A dark forest trembles as a sorcerer chants forbidden words, lightning splitting the skies. From beneath ancient roots, the Orc King URCL rises, his veins glowing with stolen science and black magic. With a roar, he summons his forgotten army, thousands of orcs reborn, mounted on colossal white bears. The ground shakes as their march begins, crushing kingdoms one by one until the whole world burns. Now their path leads straight to America, where Earth's mightiest superheroes stand ready for war. The Awakening. The night was too quiet for a forest so ancient. Owls had stopped hooting, crickets had gone still, and the air itself seemed to hold its breath. At the very heart of the wilderness, where no human foot had stepped for centuries, stood a broken circle of blackened stones. Legends called it the Grave of Kings, a place where entire armies had been buried beneath the soil after a war so bloody it was erased from human history. Few believed the stories, but one man knew the truth, and he intended to prove it. A lone figure stepped into the clearing, robes dragging across wet grass, his hands glowing with eerie blue fire. This was Zoran, a rogue sorcerer banished from every magical order. But tonight, he was not alone. Behind him stood a man in a white lab coat, his eyes feverish, clutching a case filled with glowing vials. Dr. Kell, a scientist disgraced for his biosorcery experiments, had finally found someone mad enough to help him. "Are you sure this will work?" Kell whispered, his voice trembling, though not from fear. Excitement coursed through him. Zoran raised his staff, lightning crackling in the sky, as if the heavens themselves feared his words. "Magic alone cannot awaken what lies beneath. But your science," he gestured toward the vials. "It will give him flesh. It will give him strength." Together, they poured magic and science into the soil. The earth trembled. Roots split apart. The circle of stones cracked, and the ground opened like a wound. From the darkness below, a roar thundered upward, so deep it rattled the bones of both men. And then he rose. The Orc King URCL. His body was massive, twice the size of a human, with green-black skin stitched by glowing veins of blue light, science fusing with sorcery. His eyes opened, burning with fire, his tusks dripping with black mist. Chains of bone hung from his shoulders, rattling with every movement. For centuries he had slept, but now the world would pay for forgetting him. Zoran dropped to one knee. "My king, your army awaits." URCL's voice was a storm. "Then awaken them." The forest floor split again, and thousands of decayed hands clawed upward. Skulls cracked the soil. Ancient bones reformed into hulking bodies. In moments, the graveyard became an army of reborn orcs, their bodies stronger than before, their mounts waiting. From the shadows emerged colossal white bears, armored with bone plates and iron chains, their eyes glowing like embers. The Orc King raised his sword, black and jagged, and pointed to the horizon. This world forgot its master. Tonight, it remembers. News of unnatural tremors reached the civilized world within hours. Satellites caught blurred images of giant creatures moving through forests, whole regions swallowed in flame. Governments panicked, deploying armies that vanished without a trace. Villages in Eastern Europe disappeared overnight. Highways turned into graveyards of tanks, ripped apart like toys. In a secret sanctum in New York, Dr. Strange sat cross-legged, eyes glowing as he peered into the future. What he saw made even him gasp. Worlds collapsing, cities burning, skies filled with beasts. He opened his eyes, sweat dripping down his face. The Orc King. He has returned. Thousands of miles away, Thor stood atop Asgard's Rainbow Bridge, gripping Mjolnir as storm clouds twisted unnaturally. He felt the power of another king rising, one older than most realms dared remember. By Odin's beard, he growled, "This cannot be ignored." In his tower, Tony Stark watched satellite feeds as red dots spread across the globe like a plague. This isn't a terror attack. This is war, and we're late to the party. Meanwhile, in Metropolis, Superman stood alone above the city, his cape torn by the wind. He listened, not to one scream, but to thousands carried across oceans. His jaw tightened. He didn't need strange visions or Stark's technology. He could hear the world dying. The Orc King wasted no time. His army marched west, their white bears thundering across plains, forests, and rivers. Every village was destroyed, every soldier slaughtered. Entire nations crumbled in days. Smoke and fire marked their trail, a scar across the earth. The Orc generals rode at the front, each beast taller than buildings, swinging massive weapons that split the ground itself. Dr. Kell followed behind them, documenting every battle with manic delight. Look at them. Stronger, faster, smarter than anything the world has ever seen. This is evolution through conquest. URCL turned to him, eyes glowing. This is not evolution, human. This is reclamation. The earth is mine. The Orc King's army reached the Atlantic in less than 2 weeks. Oceans that once divided continents now boiled as the bears waded through, carrying orcs on their backs, as if the sea were nothing but a shallow river. Whirlpools formed in their wake, storms gathered overhead, and whales fled in terror. When the first orcs set foot on American soil, the world finally understood. This was no invasion. This was the end. The White House went into lockdown. Fighter jets scrambled. Missiles rained down. None of it mattered. Orcs tore through tanks like paper. Bullets bounced off their armored hides. Nuclear strikes were considered but quickly dismissed. There was no time, and even if launched, who knew if it would even work? In the chaos, a signal went out. All superheroes assemble. New York became the rallying point. Iron Man landed in the center of the city, armor already upgraded for war. Doctor Strange opened portals for allies arriving from every corner of Earth and beyond. Hulk thundered into the streets, ready for destruction. Thor descended with lightning cracking in the skies. Superman hovered above them all, his eyes burning with heat vision. One by one, others joined, the defenders of Earth, united not by choice but by survival. And still, in the distance, the sound of drums echoed. Orc drums, deep, unending, shaking the very glass of skyscrapers. The Orc King rode at the head of his army, White Bear roaring beneath him, his generals following. Behind them, an ocean of orcs stretched to the horizon, a wall of green and steel. URCL lifted his sword high, its black edge reflecting fire. His voice carried across the wind, unnatural, inhuman. Tonight, Earth learns fear again. And with that, the last war began. The first clash. The world's strongest heroes didn't wait for the enemy to come knocking. By the time the Orc King's army stormed the Atlantic coast, the skies over New York were already glowing with power. Superman floated high above the skyline, capes snapping in the wind, his eyes scanning the incoming tide. Hulk stood at the base of the Brooklyn Bridge, fists clenched, body trembling with rage like a living earthquake. Iron Man's new war armor hummed with power, every surface bristling with hidden weapons. Thor spun Mjolnir in a storm of lightning, while Doctor Strange drew glowing runes in the air, his portals swirling with fire. The air itself seemed alive, and then the ground began to tremble. The first white bears appeared, massive shapes emerging through the fog. Their roars echoed like thunder, shaking skyscrapers as glass shattered in their wake. Each beast carried dozens of orc riders, their weapons blazing with cursed fire. Behind them stretched an army so vast it blotted out the horizon. At the center, towering above all, rode the Orc King URCL himself, his black blade raised toward the city. Earth's champions, he bellowed, his voice rolling like an earthquake. Come and die. The battle started like a storm. Superman shot forward first, a streak of red and blue tearing across the sky. His fist smashed into the first wave of bear riders, shattering bones and tossing bodies like dolls. But the orcs didn't fall easily. They rose again, wounds closing with unholy energy, striking back with weapons that burned like meteors. One spear grazed Superman's side, and for the first time in years, he bled. On the bridge, Hulk met the enemy head-on. He roared and ripped the first white bear in half with his bare hands, tossing its corpse into the river. Orcs swarmed him, hacking with axes, but he only grew wilder, each strike stronger than the last. Still, for every rider he crushed, 10 more replaced them. The horde was endless. Iron Man launched into the air, missiles streaking past his shoulders, painting the battlefield with explosions. The city shook as entire squads of orcs were vaporized. "Yeah, come on, ugly," he shouted, dodging incoming arrows of green fire. Yet even his advanced armor faltered when a massive bear leapt from the river, jaws snapping, dragging him into the water below. Thor landed on a rooftop, Mjolnir crackling. By the storm's fury, he roared, summoning lightning that split the sky. Bolts slammed into the army, frying dozens of orcs at once. But the Orc King lifted his black sword and absorbed the lightning into its cursed steel. With a savage laugh, URCL hurled it back, blasting Thor off the building and into the street. Doctor Strange wove spells faster than the eye could follow, golden whips of light binding entire platoons of orcs. He opened a portal beneath a charging bear, dropping it into a desert halfway across the world. But just as quickly, dark shamans among the orcs countered his spells, their magic crude but powerful, ripping holes through his shields. Strange staggered, his cloak straining to hold him aloft. The first clash wasn't just brutal, it was chaos. Civilians screamed from the shadows of skyscrapers as fire spread, the city becoming a battlefield of gods and monsters. Helicopters circled above, but were swatted from the sky by orc warlords wielding spiked chains. The Statue of Liberty's torch exploded as a flaming boulder smashed into it, sparks raining into the harbor. Through it all, the Orc King advanced, unhurried, unstoppable. Every strike of his sword brought shockwaves that leveled entire blocks. No matter how many orcs the heroes killed, the army only seemed to grow. Superman dove again, this time slamming into URCL himself, fists hammering like meteors. For a moment, it looked like the Orc King faltered. But then URCL caught Superman mid-punch, grinned, and hurled him across the skyline, smashing him through the Empire State Building. The crowd watching on live feeds gasped in horror. Hulk roared louder than ever, leaping to intercept, but the Orc King swung his black blade, slashing Hulk across the chest. Blood sprayed across the street. Hulk staggered, furious, but even he felt the sting of a weapon not made for mortals. Iron Man burst from the river, water dripping from scorched armor. Okay, round two. He fired his chest reactor at full power, blasting one of the generals from his bear. But the beast rose again, shaking the street, and the general climbed back on as if nothing had happened. Thor, bleeding but unbroken, stood beside Iron Man. Stark, he growled. These creatures are no mere soldiers. They are cursed. Yeah, well, cursed or not, they bleed if you hit them hard enough. Together they charged, lightning and lasers lighting the battlefield. Doctor Strange opened another massive portal above the army, summoning a storm of meteors from another dimension. Fire rained down on the orcs, the city shaking under the impact. For a moment, the battlefield glowed with victory. And then URCL raised his sword again. With a single swing, he split the meteors apart, the shockwave blasting Strange to the ground. The sorcerer coughed blood, his spells unraveling. By the time the first battle reached its peak, New York looked like a war zone from another planet. Skyscrapers toppled, bridges burned, rivers boiled. Thousands of orcs lay dead, but still tens of thousands remained, pressing forward with an unending hunger. Superman crawled from the rubble of the Empire State, eyes blazing red. Hulk tore the black blade's wound open wider, his rage pushing him beyond limits. Thor roared to the skies, calling storms darker than any in human memory. Iron Man's suit smoked, nearly destroyed, but he stood firm. Strange forced himself upright, muttering incantations despite broken ribs. They had survived the first clash, but only barely. The Orc King stood at the center of his army, untouched, his white bear roaring so loud the ground split beneath it. He pointed his sword toward the heroes, a cruel grin on his face. This is only the beginning. And as the fires burned across New York, the world realized with horror. If this was just the first battle, The war itself would be apocalyptic. Heroes fall. The smoke of New York hung thick, glowing red from fire and lightning. Sirens wailed in the distance, drowned out by the drums of the Orc horde. Every street was a battlefield, every building a ruin. The first clash had ended, but the true nightmare was only beginning. The Orc King URCL rode through the flames, his white bear stomping cars into dust, his black blade dripping with blood. He looked at the heroes, wounded, exhausted, but still standing, and laughed. Is this your strength? A handful of mortals playing gods. Superman was the first to charge again, streaking forward like a meteor. His fists hammered against URCL's armor, blow after blow shaking the air. For a moment, it seemed the Orc King might fall. Then the black blade rose. With one savage swing, it cut across Superman's side, the cursed edge burning deeper than kryptonite. Superman crashed into the street, blood soaking his suit. The crowd watching around the world gasped. The Man of Steel, wounded. Doctor Strange rushed forward, weaving spells faster than thought, golden chains wrapping around the Orc King. Now, he shouted. Thor hurled Mjolnir, the hammer slamming into URCL's chest with thunder so loud it shattered windows across Manhattan. Hulk leapt, fists pounding, while Iron Man fired his full arsenal. For a heartbeat, the king was buried in fire, lightning, and fury. When the smoke cleared, URCL still stood. His armor was cracked, his skin scorched, but his grin was wider than ever. Good, he growled. I expected more. The black blade cut Strange chains like thread. He swung again, and the street split open. The shockwave hurled Hulk through 3 skyscrapers. Thor fell to one knee, lightning sputtering. Iron Man's HUD filled with red warnings as his suit nearly shut down. And then came the generals. From the smoke, URCL's champions emerged, towering orc lords on their monstrous bears, wielding weapons carved from bone and fire. They split the heroes apart. One general slammed into Hulk, driving him deeper into rubble. Another tangled Thor in barbed chains, dragging him across asphalt. A third clashed with Iron Man, his armor denting with each blow. The heroes were being overwhelmed. Above it all, Strange floated, bleeding but unbroken. He began the mirror dimension spell, his hands blazing with complex runes. If he could trap the Orc King, even for minutes, the heroes might regroup. But URCL looked up, his eyes burning red. He lifted his sword and slashed, not at Strange, but at reality itself. The sky cracked open, the spell shattered, and Strange screamed as the backlash hurled him into a ruined building. Before he could rise, one of the general's spears impaled him through the chest. The Sorcerer Supreme gasped, his cloak tried to lift him, but the Orc army roared as Strange blood stained the street. His last words were a whisper, "Protect the world." Then his body went limp. Doctor Strange was dead. The world shook. Hulk, seeing Strange fall, unleashed a roar that split the sky. His eyes glowed green fire as his rage doubled. He tore free of rubble, smashing the general who had pinned him. The beast was crushed, bones breaking, but even in his fury, Hulk was outnumbered. The Orc King himself slammed into him, driving the cursed blade across Hulk's chest again and again. Blood sprayed. For the first time, Hulk staggered backward, coughing, barely able to stay standing. Iron Man swooped in, desperate, blasting URCL with every ounce of his suit's power. Come on, come on. His uni-beam hit the king full force, driving him back. For a second, it worked, until URCL hurled his blade straight through the sky. The sword punched through Iron Man's chest plate. Sparks burst. The armor failed. Tony's voice cut off mid-quipping. The hero fell from the sky, smoke trailing, crashing into the ruins below. The world went silent. Iron Man was gone. Thor staggered forward, Mjolnir in hand, lightning crawling across his body. His face was bruised, his arm broken, but still he rose. "You will not have this world," he snarled. He hurled Mjolnir with all his might, lightning tearing the sky apart. The hammer struck the Orc King square in the chest. The impact blasted entire blocks into rubble. For a moment, even the Orc horde went still. But when the dust cleared, URCL caught Mjolnir in one massive hand. His grin was savage. "This toy is mine now." The impossible had happened. Thor's scream echoed through the burning city. By the time night fell, New York was unrecognizable. Fires burned uncontrolled, skyscrapers reduced to skeletons of steel. The streets were painted with ash and blood. The world's greatest offenders were broken. Strange dead, Iron Man fallen, Superman bleeding, Hulk staggering, Thor disarmed. The Orc King stood in the center of the devastation, his black blade raised, Mjolnir clutched in his other hand. His army roared around him, the sound shaking the earth. "Your heroes are nothing," he declared, his voice carrying across every screen, every radio, every device broadcasting the war. "The age of men is over. The age of orcs has begun." The world wept as the first great heroes fell. And somewhere in the shadows, a whisper spread among survivors. If this was only the beginning, how many more would die before the end? World War. The death of Iron Man and Strange's broken body shook the earth like a funeral bell. News channels ran the images in a loop. The Orc King URCL, standing in the ashes of New York, his black blade glowing, Mjolnir clutched in his other hand. For the first time in generations, the world felt hopeless. And then the invasion spread. Orc war bands poured out of New York like a flood. White bears thundering down highways, devouring everything in their path. Bridges collapsed. Cities fell silent. Armies sent to contain them were erased within hours. The war was no longer an American tragedy. It was a global apocalypse. In Europe, the Eiffel Tower cracked in half as an orc general smashed through Paris, flames swallowing the city. In Asia, entire battalions were torn apart in Beijing as cursed firestorms rained from the sky. In Africa, villages vanished overnight, swallowed by armies that marched with drums of bone. The Orc Horde wasn't just conquering, they were erasing nations. Everywhere, survivors whispered the same words: "The age of men is over." But Earth wasn't finished yet. Thor returned to the battlefield, his face bloodied but unbowed. Stripped of Mjolnir, he lifted a rusted axe from the ruins and swore to fight until his last breath. Hulk, wounded and staggering, dragged himself into battle after battle, each roar shaking entire armies apart. Superman, though poisoned and bleeding, refused to stay down, lifting collapsing buildings to save what lives he could. Across the globe, smaller heroes rose where giants had fallen. Falcon led desperate air raids, his wings shredded but still flying. Black Widow struck from the shadows, assassinating orc generals before they could rally their troops. Even Hawkeye returned, his arrows tipped with Stark's last designs, detonating entire platoons at once. It was no longer just a superhero war, it was humanity's war. Still, the Orc King seemed untouchable. In Washington, D.C., URCL raised his sword and leveled the Capitol in a single swing, the dome collapsing into dust. He stood atop its ruins, his army chanting his name, his stolen Mjolnir glowing with dark lightning. "This world bends," he roared, "and when it breaks, it will kneel." The broadcast went everywhere, phones, TVs, satellites. Billions saw his face, his power. Fear spread faster than his armies. But among the ruins, sparks of resistance still burned. Iron Man's body had not been recovered. Whispers spread that Stark might still be alive, working somewhere underground, building something the Orc King had never seen. Doctor Strange's cloak had flown away from the battlefield, carrying some last fragment of his magic. Even in death, hope lingered. And then came the call. Superman, battered and pale, appeared on every surviving screen, his voice hoarse but unyielding. "The Orc King wants the earth to kneel. We will not. We fight, not just as heroes, but as one world." His words carried across ruins, across burning cities, across broken homes. Soldiers clenched their rifles tighter. Survivors picked up weapons. Even children whispered the words in the dark. Humanity would not surrender. But in the Orc King's war camp, URCL smiled. He had wanted this. A world united against him was a world ready to be crushed. He raised Mjolnir, lightning black as ash ripping through the sky, and swore, The final battle is near, and when it ends, no hero will remain. The world was at war, and a last stand was coming. The last stand. Washington, D.C. was no longer a city. It was a graveyard of steel and fire. The Capitol lay in ruins, the White House buried beneath rubble, and the National Mall scorched black. The Orc King URCL stood at the center, his white bear growling, Mjolnir crackling with stolen lightning in one hand, his black blade pulsing in the other. Around him, his army chanted, their voices a tidal wave of rage. And then, through the smoke, the last heroes appeared. Superman, pale and weakened, but still burning with resolve. Thor, limping, wielding nothing but a shattered axe. Hulk, scarred and bleeding, his roar broken but unyielding. Beside them, battered allies, Falcon, Black Widow, Hawkeye, Nebula Man, and the remnants of Earth's defenders. Above them, portals opened. Strange's cloak returned, carrying shards of magic, flaring bright one last time. And from the shadows, a familiar voice. Miss me? Iron Man stepped forward. His armor was rebuilt, blackened, jagged, glowing with unstable energy. It wasn't a weapon, it was his last invention, designed to burn out in one final fight. The crowd watching across the world held its breath. This was it, Earth's last stand. The battle erupted in seconds. Superman launched first, smashing into URCL with the force of a hurricane. Hulk roared, tearing through waves of bear riders, his fists painted red. Thor hurled his broken axe with all his strength, lightning storming across the sky. Iron Man unleashed a barrage so powerful the earth itself shook. For the first time, the Orc King staggered. His armor cracked, his bear fell to its knees. The army faltered as generals fell one by one, slain by Widow's blades and Hawkeye's explosive arrows. It looked, for a moment, like victory, but then URCL roared, his body twisting, transforming. His veins glowed brighter, his skin splitting, his form swelling into something no longer orc, no longer mortal. A fusion of sorcery, orc blood, and alien science. His eyes burned like suns. His voice thundered across the battlefield. You cannot kill me. I am the end. He struck. Mjolnir's black lightning hurled Superman through monuments. The cursed blade cut Hulk so deep even rage could not heal it. Thor was smashed into the ground, breathless, broken. One by one, the heroes fell. Only Iron Man stood. His suit screamed with alarms, power surging toward overload. He knew what he had built. It wasn't for survival. It was for sacrifice. He locked his eyes on URCL. You want a world? You'll have to choke on it. Then he triggered the core. The suit exploded with light brighter than the sun. The blast tore through the battlefield, disintegrating orcs, shattering the Orc King's form, leveling everything for miles. The shockwave was seen from space. When the light faded, silence fell. The battlefield was ash. The army was gone. Iron Man was gone. And in the smoke, the Orc King lay on one knee, his body broken, his weapons shattered. But his eyes were still glowing. He laughed, a ragged, terrible laugh. This is not the end. And then the screen went black. Across the world, billions stared, trembling. Was the Orc King dead? Was Iron Man's sacrifice enough? Or had the war only begun? The last words echoed across every broadcast, every device, every mind. The age of orcs has only just begun.